Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about eliminating the green bridge.
Well, when you think about a bridge, what that means is it's a transition point from one to another. And when we're looking at a green bridge, we're talking about everything that's living out in the field, so all the plants out in a field between when we took one crop off and when we're putting the next crop on. Now, normally if you just say, well, I'm harvesting soybeans in the fall and I'm going to plant corn next spring, in the upper Midwest, well, we've got winter in there and we've got frost and everything's going to be dead out in the field. We don't have much issue with green bridge in that type of situation. But when we're looking at harvesting a spring crop like spring wheat, for example, or even winter wheat, and then we try to plant winter wheat again, maybe a month or two later, well, in the middle of the summer, there's nothing to kill off those weeds except you. And so we're very interested in controlling all the vegetation in that field because little things like mites, for example, or insects, can live in that plant material that's out in the field and then transition into the next crop.
Well, it's not just insects or mites. It could be diseases. It could be other weeds. I mean, we want to have everything dead for 1 to 2 weeks prior to planting the next crop. And I don't care if it's a cover crop, if it's some other crop, if it's weeds, whatever it is. We just want to have that ground black or at least everything dead for 1 to 2 weeks prior to seeding the fall crop. And the big reason, like we're talking about here, is to try to prevent anything from moving from the last crop or from whatever was out there into the next crop.
Well, when you think about it, let's just take each one of these things individually. Okay, so let's look at weeds. Let's say you have a very difficult to control weed like cheatgrass, for example, and if you've got cheatgrass that's out and growing in a field, now you're going to plant winter wheat into that field. How are you going to control the cheatgrass in winter wheat? Well, there aren't very many options, and the timing is just absolutely critical. And if one of those weed control herbicides doesn't work, now you are really in trouble. So using a burn down where you can spray a non-selective herbicide that's going to control everything green out in the field, that's a real benefit for a farmer. And now we can stop that first flush at least of cheatgrass, maybe the only flush, who knows, from getting into that next crop. That's very important for the farmer to get a good stand establishment going into the winter.
When it comes to diseases, it's kind of the same thing. We don't want the last crop to have some disease that ends up going into this next crop. Now, it can certainly still happen. Just having the green bridge eliminated for 1 to 2 weeks, there can still be a transfer of disease from one crop to the next crop, but at least it's a little bit less likely. And so then it means that your seed treatment doesn't have to do as much work. Your early fungicide treatment doesn't have to do as much work in your next crop. We have varieties out there that are somewhat disease tolerant for many different diseases, but there's nothing that's 100% disease tolerant for every single disease out there. So just to be on the safe side, we like eliminating that green bridge just because we have a little less disease issue going into the next crop.
Well, and the other thing, insects, mites, these kinds of things. You say, well, there's insecticides and miticides that can be used to try and control some of these things. For the most part, that's accurate. You know, a lot of the problem insects we can control with the spray application, but why do we need to do that? If we take away their food source out in the field, which is plants that they're going to be feeding on, all of a sudden the bugs are either going to leave or they're going to die. And that allows us to start the next crop off without having insect feeding and mites on the crop right off the bat.
Well, once again, our Farm Basics topic today was the green bridge and how important it is to make sure we've eliminated the green bridge going into the next crop.
One of those things that could be living out in those fields is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed coming up later in the show.